Low downforce returned, and so did the good racing at the short tracks. The debut of the 2020 short track package for the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. Um, Basically, after seeing how big of a failure last year was in terms of high downforce at short tracks, with not all the downforce or not all the horsepower they could have, NASCAR decided they need to have a change. They went to lower downforce at these tracks, 2 3/4 inches spoilers, much smaller splitter, a lot less downforce. And what we saw here today at Phoenix was one of the best Phoenix races, maybe, um, and ever, and a 10,000% increase over what we saw at this racetrack last season. Um, Cars were hard to drive. They could pass for the lead, and at many other points uh, in the in the field, and it was just overall a fun race. There were a lot of storylines that happened. And there was never really one dominant car that got out front, just kind of pulled away. Drivers would lead at points, other points another driver would lead, another point the first driver would get back to lead, then third driver would come into play, then fourth driver. I mean, I think in the laps led, the most laps led was like 92 or 93, and that was Chase Elliott. Next time it's like Brad with like 82, and then Harvick and some others had like 60. So it wasn't like one driver got out front and stayed out front like the whole race. Chase led less than a third of the race and led the most laps. So mission accomplished in that regard. No car ever stayed perfect. It was just kind of like, if you track position still is important. Gen 6 cars track position has always been important. However, it was less important than normal. We saw at the beginning of stage 2 drivers like Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, and Tyler Reddick, who came and got tires or had newer tires, came through the field on those tires and got inside the top 5 during the stage. If that were last year, absolutely 100% they all would have been fucked. They would not be able to come through at all. They would have been screwed. Martin Truex Jr. started last in the race, and before the first yellow came out, was inside the top 15. Last year in this short track package with the huge spoilers and a tons of downforce, Truex would have been lucky to get inside the top 20 by the time the first yellow came out. So it was just kind of, it was a lot better overall, and just a lot more in the direction NASCAR should be going in terms of making the cars harder to drive and making sure that there's not walls of air coming off the back of the race cars, so it doesn't make it hard to drive back behind another guy. Maybe another contributor to that was the PJ1 they put down the racetrack. In my opinion, I think they put down just a little bit too much. It seemed like the outside was overpowered at times, but as the race wore on, that PJ1 got worn out, and it looked like the inside became a little bit better, but still seemed like the outside wanted to be up there. Maybe they could change that a little bit because the outside was very overpowered, but overall, there were still multiple lanes because of the PJ1, which made it a lot more fun to watch. And once again, just one of the best Phoenix races NASCAR's had, definitely in the Gen 6 era. You kind of look at races that can maybe be ranked up there in terms of how good this one was. 2018 Chase race there. And then you go back and you think maybe the 2013 Chase race and the first race of 2011. Those are maybe the three, Phoenix races that you kind of think about in terms of the 2010s. Phoenix has always been a track where it's not like you don't go and you say, oh, this could be a great race when we go to Phoenix, because it's never really had great races. But you go to Phoenix, you can say, oh, this could be a good solid race. You're not expecting terribly much from it. You're not expecting, like a classic and a barn burner, but you're expecting it to be at least good. And we've seen that at Phoenix ever since stages really came into play. I mean, 2017 races were both decent or good. 2018 races were both good. 2019 was bad, and that's only because of the package. And then here today, we saw a great race. I would rank it 8 or 9 out of 10. It was that good. It was really, really good. Maybe that's part of me, of the low downforce gang, saying yes, I really love that because it had low downforce, but I mean, like, the low downforce contributed to how good of a race it was. That's the direction NASCAR needs to be going in. Harder to drive race cars, yet they don't understand it. They're so, in tune with the drafting. It really, really makes me frustrated. In terms of the numbers from today's race, even though you don't even need to look at the numbers to see that was a good race. The eye test, it passed the eye test immediately. But if you're curious about the numbers and how the numbers looked, last year's Phoenix race in the spring had, I'm trying to remember, didn't have a lot. It had like 1,300 green flag passes. I think somewhere around there, like 1,300 green flag passes. Um, and then you go 1 year later, and I had 17 lead changes as well. 1 year later, with this low downforce package, 20 lead changes and 2,200 green flag passes. That is an increase of nearly, what did I say, 1,300 before and 22. That's nearly 1,000 more green flag passes, and we had more yellows. So a green flag pass is technically any pass that happens on the racetrack under the green flag. That's for position. It's at scoring loops. It's not at the start-finish line. It's at scoring loops. So someone could be side by side a scoring loop, and they could stay side by side the next scoring loop. But if the one guy had an inch advantage and the next guy had an inch advantage, the next scoring loop is technically a pass. So basically, it had 12. We had 12 cautions today. Last year's races, I think, had like 8 and 5 or something like that. Theoretically, the less cautions you have, the better the number should look, because under green flag pit stops, which I think they had last year at Phoenix, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they had at least one of those last year at Phoenix. Under green flag pit stops, there's technically passing going on, because if someone hits pit road, they're getting passed by cars out on the racetrack, and it's technically under the green flag, so it counts as a pass. Even though it's not really a pass because it's pit road that they're getting passed because, it still counts as a pass. So technically, with less yellows coming out, there should be more green flag pit stops, which means there should be more passing. I'm pretty sure they at least had passing in the fall race, or I'm pretty sure they had green flag pit stops last year in the fall race. If I'm not, I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that they did, which should count as more passes, right? So there were more restarts, you may say, today. And that's true. More restarts technically leads to more passes. However, last year was this is the restart package with the high downforce. So last year at Phoenix, shouldn't they have been 5 wide to be able to make it work? Somehow, under a low downforce package, the restarts were better. Why were the restarts better? Because they would drive it hard into the turn number 1, get loose up the racetrack, allow other guys to jump to the inside, and they got 3 and 4 wide at points. They were wrecking on restarts. They were all over the place. Crazy loose. I mean, this was racing at its finest. I would love to just go and say thank you, Goodyear, for bringing a tire that was able to wear out. That's one of the things they could not do last year at short tracks. Be it Martinsville, Phoenix, Loudon, you name it. They could not bring a tire that was able to wear out. Why couldn't they do that? Because there was so much downforce on the cars. The loads on the tires were extreme. They were going so fast in the center of the corner. They could not bring a tire that would wear out, or else they'd be exploding every like 20 laps, which we don't want. With less downforce, you may say, well, they have to wheel the car more, so technically it is putting more of a strain on the tire. Yes, the tires are going to wear because of that. However, it's not putting load on the tire. They're slowing down in the middle of the corners, which is less load on the tire. So that's another reason why Goodyear is able to bring better tires with a low downforce package. There's less load on the tire, as opposed to holding it wide open through a 33-degree bank corner. Why do they not have tires that wear Daytona and Talladega? Because they can't have those. You know, it's almost impossible if you're going to be doing that. You know, the load on the tires is extreme there. You need to have a hard tire there. So thankfully, they can now bring a soft tire to places like Phoenix, Martinsville, probably not Bristol still, because that's still a pretty, but they can bring a tire that wears a little more. Loudon, Dover, maybe a little bit more. So that will be exciting. And I also want to point out that just about 3-4 months ago, right, we were sitting here as NASCAR fans wondering what was going to happen at the end of this 2020 NASCAR season, because the second to last race is Martinsville, and the last race at Phoenix, which were 2 short tracks, which, by the way, had pretty lackluster races last year. Martinsville had 6 lead changes overall last year in both the races combined, and Phoenix had like 23 combined, and 8 in the fall race, which was dominated by Denny Hamlin, who got ahead by like 12 seconds. Yeah, it was pretty bad. We as NASCAR fans were wondering, what's going to happen? Is it going to be that bad next year? Now, I think it's safe to say the end of this year is not going to be terrible. We saw Goodyear could bring a tire that wears, and the low downforce is working. I'm feeling fine now about the end of the season with Martinsville and Phoenix back-to-back. That's 2 quality racetracks that, in my opinion, are going to put on one hell of a show, especially Martinsville. Imagine that, getting into the Final Four. That's gonna be crazy. Um, so it was fun today for sure. And I'm trying to like remember what the biggest lead was today, and I can't really remember a huge lead. I maybe like a few seconds at points, but it never really lasted. Which is awesome. Awesome to see. In terms of storylines, Truex started at the rear of the field because of an engine change, drove up through the field and was inside the top 10 for a lot of the race until he got hit by Eric Almirola in a late restart, sent him into the wall and into the garage. Austin Dillon blew a tire, sent him to the garage. Tyler Reddick ran inside the top 10 a lot of the day, was inside the top 5 at points, was second at a point, but had once like his teammate Austin Dillon a tire issue that sent him to the garage. That was a tough break for Tyler Reddick because he had a really good run going. The rookies have continued to struggle. Christopher Bell, once again, just a no-show this week. Cole Custer sniffed out a top 10 at the end. John Hernandez was running top 20 a lot of the race until he had issues under I think it was the last yellow when they wrecked off turn number 4. So the rookies aren't having a great campaign so far. Except Reddick. Reddick was up there until he had his tire issue. Early on the race in stage number 1, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, and Brad Keselowski, which were 3 favorites to at least run in the top 5 this race, had issues on a restart. Hamlin was in the middle 3 wide. He and Keselowski got close. Maybe the air disrupted the 11 car. He got loose underneath the 2, sent him up into the 12 and the 2. Brad spun around, hit the outside wall with the driver's side of the car. Ryan Blaney and Denny Hamlin both got extensive damage. Blaney went to the garage. Hamlin stayed on the racetrack, and Hamlin actually got a top 20 out of the day because of all the craziness that happened at the end. Ryan Blaney finished, I think, last or second to last or something. So Blaney, his bad luck continues. He's had all 4 races so far this season. Had really good race cars and has not been able to show for it besides Daytona. Keselowski then played some strategy. At the end of stage 1, he came down pit road under a late yellow in the stage and got 4 fresh tires. He then basically faded back throughout the pack and took it easy on the tires. Hamlin finished in front of him in the stage. He then stayed out. When the stage yellow came out, so a lot of others came down. He restarted inside the top 10, drove up there and got to the lead. It looked like Brad had one of the cars to win the race, if not for some untimely yellows and maybe some questionable pit calls. I mean, there was a run where they had a good amount of laps on the tires and he stayed out. And then under the last or second to last yellow, he came down pit road from 3rd position, which kind of confused me as well. So that was kind of interesting for sure. Chase Elliott was a force to be reckoned with early on. He led most of stage 1. Harvick won stage 1. Keselowski won stage 2. Chase was actually leading stage 2 with about 40 to go, 50 to go, when he said, I have a loose wheel, and come down pit road. Chase fell a lap down, got his lap back at the stage yellow. Couldn't really recover, though, up inside the top 5, and he got 7th after leading 90-odd laps. He's led, I think, over 180 so far this season, which is the most of anyone in the Cup Series, but he doesn't really have much to show for it. He's sitting decent in points right now. I believe he's like 4th or 5th in actual points. So that's interesting. Who won the race, though, was Joey Logano, his 2nd win of the season. Another race where maybe he didn't have the fastest car. He had a fast race car. He didn't have the fastest, though, and he kind of just got one by good fortune and good pit calls. Paul Wolfe and the 22 team have definitely, I think the move kind of worked for them. I definitely think Joey Logano would have been better off with Todd Gordon because Todd Gordon has absolutely been dominant for Ryan Blaney. But I do think Paul Wolfe with Joey Logano is going decent so far. I mean, they have 2 wins. I mean, what more can you really want of that team? 2 wins in the first 4 races of the season. I'm sure they'll definitely take that and run with it. But yeah, he held off on the final run Harvick and Larson and Kyle Busch and Clint Bowyer. So kind of what you expect out of a top 5. Wasn't really too many surprises inside the top 5. Pretty much what you expect. I think Almirola ran top 10 most of the day. William Byron somehow got a top 10 out of the day when he was running like 15th all day long. Jimmy Johnson, his final season of competition, he got a solid 12th place finish with a car that didn't really look great at all this weekend. Practice I was looking, I was like, man, he's not going to run well. He got top 15 out of it, so decent. That's kind of what the 48 team needs to do. Last season they struggled because in races where they should have gotten at least a decent amount of points, they either wrecked or tried too hard and something happened, right? This season, their main goal should be just protect the points that we can get out of this day. Jimmy Johnson, it wasn't a day to go up there and get, a 5th place finish. It was a day to get there and just get a top 15 and move on. A good points day. 12th place, a good points day. Keeps him top 5 in the real points. It's what he needs to do until he can go out there and win a race and then be solidified into the playoffs. So yeah, entertaining race overall. And I want to say one final thing before I go. I watched an interview just a little bit ago, and it was with Kevin Harvick. Bob Pockrass asked him a question after the race about the package, which I just found his answer funny because it kind of embodies what I feel. He went and he said something about like, well, yeah, you can't get much worse than what last year was. Last year was an absolute failure or whatever. He went on to say how it was easier, not easy, but it was easier for the drivers to pass, and it was possible for them to pass. There wasn't as much dirty air back there. And they said, I wish it could be like that every week, which was kind of just a sly comment thrown in at the end. You know, it wasn't really like, he didn't need to say that. You know, it wasn't really like anyone asked him like, "Oh, is this how you feel it should be everywhere else?" And he didn't, you know, he wasn't asked that. He was asked, you know, how was it better than last year? Did it feel better than last year? And he said, "Yeah, you know, whatever." And then when he said, "But I wish we could do this every week," basically implying, "I wish we could not have to deal with a bunch of dirty air every week at these bigger tracks, and I wish we had to handle, you know, manhandle the cars every week instead of just holding it wide open or partial throttle and not really hitting the brakes. You know, they had to use the brakes today, which was basically a foreign concept. I mean, like you know, Daytona, don't brake. Las Vegas, don't brake. Auto Club, maybe use the brakes, but let off. You know, so driver's package for sure. We'll have a few more weeks of 1.5 milers with the big ass spoiler package. Atlanta's next, Homestead, and I believe Texas after Homestead, and then we get a swing of crazy packages. So after Texas is Bristol, I think, which is using this package. Richmond, which is using this package. Talladega, which is the crazy death package. And then I think you have Dover, and then maybe Martinsville, and then you go to Charlotte, I think. So I think there's a long gap between the 1.5 miler package, which is going to be interesting. I think that's going to be a stretch of races I'm going to enjoy. You know, Richmond, Bristol. It's going to make Richmond a lot better. Bristol, I think it's going to be just about the same. It's package proof. Whatever you run there, it's going to be good. Talladega, if they change anything, we'll see. Dover is going to be a lot better than last year, hopefully. I mean, it should be. Dover's never really great, but it should be at least better than last year. And Martinsville is going to 100% be better than last year. They can bring a tire that's going to wear out. I think it was Brian Keselowski after last year's Martinsville playoff race said something like, you could have run 1,000 laps on these tires today, which was the honest to God truth. They did not wear at all because there was so much low in the tires in the corner because of how much downforce there was. They couldn't make it wear out or else there was going to be tire failures. So it's gonna be interesting for sure. Atlanta next. Last year under the package, it was decent. Pretty much like every Atlanta race, kinda. I didn't really see much of a difference other than there was no in-car track bar adjuster. So we'll see. Low downforce for the win. That's all. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you guys for the next video.